In fact, you guys, I'm relating this the first time publicly, but think about this. The number was 22. It is now higher, the number of veterans that kill themselves daily. There are several things that happen that contribute to the degradation of the military mindset. One of them is the complete and total loss of your identity, which I suffered from. Guys, thinking about this, we're talking about a guy who was at 37 doors at the time, sitting there 1 year after retirement, who I had everything going for me. And then one day I came home and my mind was telling me, hey, let's go to sleep. Take these pills. It's all right. I took a bottle of Xanax and my whole goal was to fall asleep. And I didn't care if I woke up.
This is the Fit Investor Podcast, where we talk about how to live a more holistic life of being fit, not only financially, but physically and faithfully. We'll be joined by experts in all these areas to share their experiences and actionable and practical tips so that you can be a fit investor too. So now let's join our hosts, Cale Delaney, Wesley Whitehead, and Brenna Carls.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Fit Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Cale Delaney, here with my co-host, the bearded man, Mr. Wesley Whitehead.
Hello.
And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Bud Evans.
Good morning, guys.
Bud is a retired police officer of 13 years and retired U.S. Air Force military officer of 34 years. He was also the former mayor of Cinnaminson, New Jersey, which is really cool. He's a real estate investor, licensed agent, and currently operates in New Jersey and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with single-family homes. And he was actually a real estate investment coach for Tarek El Moussa. He still teaches the BRRRR method, Commercial Multifamily Analysis, Property Management, and Velocity and Infinite Banking. He's underwritten over $100 million in deals and created a personal real estate portfolio of over $10 million. He's the president of Aim High Properties, LLC. He also has a podcast, Aim High, and he operates 8 subordinate companies ranging from property management to hair salons. So welcome, Bud, first off. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, guys.
Yeah. And so Bud and I had connected, I think we'd actually connected through a podcast group on Facebook, and he was gracious enough to have me on his podcast. Want to return the favor, but Bud's got a really cool story that we want to share, and it's going to have some reality to it, some real life things. So we hope you guys are ready for some good stuff. So why don't we start it off, Bud? You were a military officer in the Air Force for 34 years, which that's pretty impressive in and of itself. A mayor, and now you're in real estate. Take us back a little bit. How did we get started in all this?
Yeah, my greatest accomplishment, though, has been I've been married for a long time. Been married for over 30. My wife and I met in 1986 at the SATs. She gave me a stick of gum, and the rest is history.
Nice. Who had the better score, though? Come on.
I did.
Oh, nice.
I did. I came right in from a party and sat down because I had already joined the Air Force and I was on delayed enlistment. I had to wait until my 18th birthday and I went down, signed the papers, went away that summer. And she's been with me since that December of 86.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we have a 31-year-old son too. So
31. Man, oh man. Making us feel young. I like it. Awesome. So you enlisted in the Air Force then right away.
Yeah, I've done a few things, guys. So I wasn't really big on school in high school because it came easy to me. So I didn't really do a lot of homework, which factored a 0 into all of my grades. So I wound up with still credit enough. I wound up with high C's and low B's, always missed honors by at least one class, like a couple of points here, a couple of points there. Failed a few classes along the way as well. I was a rower and I played ice hockey, and periodically I would get suspended for academics.
Wow.
It's one of those things. Nobody knew what ADHD was back then, though. So it was very, very enlightening when I joined the military, and all of a sudden I learned about discipline, and that kind of carried through the majority of my life. Was that discipline and process and procedure and checklist type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
So fast forward to 87, I went in. 2021, I got out entirely.
Wow.
Yeah, 7 years before. So I left active duty and went into the Guard in 2016 and then stayed there. So I wasn't eligible to collect my retirement until this coming October. But yeah, so I was able to, I leave the military. Real estate provided me the opportunity to leave the military basically 7 years early and just wait for the pension to come in.
Yeah. I just want to touch on it because it's interesting. So how did this whole being mayor of Cinnaminson, New Jersey, where did that fall into play? How did that come about?
How'd you have time to do that?
Yeah, I didn't sleep. So it's funny. And it's a great segue into how I actually got into real estate. So here's the backstory. I was in the military for an extended period of time. We had lived in Limerick, Pennsylvania for about 15 years. We decided to move over to South Jersey, Cinnaminson to be specific, because the majority of my medical stuff was held at McGuire Air Force Base. So this was before it was a joint base. So we moved to South Jersey to make it easier for me to get medical and for Stephanie to get medical. It's my wife. And when we did, I always like to move into places and make them better than when I got there. So I didn't really care for the current committee, went to a few meetings. Then I started going to more meetings. Then somebody approached me. Then I got signatures, went back to the military and said, hey, can I run for local office? And they said, yeah, good luck. And they signed this document and made it all legal. So I ran for and was elected to township committee. And the next thing I knew, I was sitting in the mayor's seat. Yeah. So it was a quick turnover. The entire committee turned over. The township manager turned over. And then in June of that year, actually it was July of that year, the military came back to me and said, oops, we made a mistake. You're not allowed to be in public office.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So July of 2018, I resigned on Friday, made it official on Monday, and got 40 to 50 hours of my life back all in one weekend.
Oh, wow.
So I started to research real estate, and that's the transition. So that's how I got into politics.
Wow.
Didn't like politics. I'm not a politician, never was, but I was the right guy for the right job at the right time. So I stepped in and did what I could do. And then that July, I started to research real estate because I was like, I guess there's no better time than the present. I've always thought about it. By September, I had bid on a few auction properties. By October, I had joined a mentorship program. In January, I started my first flip. In the first 2 years, 10 wholesales, 21 rental properties, and 30 flips in the first 2 years. Now we're up over 100 flips, 50 doors, and we've got a few commercial properties as well. Still only 10 wholesales. I don't like to give things away for free.
Wow.
Wow, man. Yeah, that's impressive. So what was it or was there something specific that drew you to real estate? Or was there a reason? Was it just, hey, it's time to start thinking about the future, time to start actually building something? Or what was it?
Yeah, great question. I had friends who were in real estate, but it wasn't until and not kidding, everybody's got the same story, right? One of my sergeants passed me the little purple Bible, right? The Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it was earth shattering. Everything that I thought I knew about money, everything that when you're in a middle class family and they teach you about the American dream, I'll make air quotes, grow up, go to school, get married, fight for a better job, make more money, get up to your eyeballs in debt, and then work until you die, essentially, unless you get pensions out of it, and then a 401k should be enough, which is another fallacy. So after I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then a couple of Brandon Turner books, I'll give him a plug. And then it was on. That January, it was just, we hit the ground running. I say we because as much as I would love to take credit for all of this myself, but real estate is a team sport. So we got together with a bunch of people and just started plugging along, man.
Yeah. And so you said you got together with a bunch of people, with these friends or people other investors you have met through networking or?
Yeah. So 99% of this business is relationship based, and your network is your net worth, which I have actually written right here. Yeah, it is what it is, right? 99% is networking and 1% is getting out of your own way and letting everybody that you hire do what they're supposed to do. I had problems with the second part of that, 1%. But yeah, so it was an eye-opening experience jumping in, picked up a few friends from here as contractors, a few people that I had met in the networks, met a guy at a Flyers game in a bar and hung out with him. We were having a conversation and he said, and I'd known this guy at this point for about 5 years. His name is Matt Zvitkovich. He's now my partner in 2 of the portfolios that we own. And he was like, haven't you ever asked me to invest? And then it was on. It was just that there was no stopping us at that point. So he's still partners in Code 3 properties and AAA 2nd Street right now.
Nice. Let me ask you, because this is something I think that a lot of people struggle with, is building those partnerships or those teams. And I think mainly because of trust. I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles to overcome. Like, how did you, I don't know how to put it, not to say vet, but did you just feel comfortable? Or you guys had complementary skill sets, or what made you comfortable with going in with other people and starting something off like this?
Yeah. So Matt started out as a private lender. So he was lending me money for my deals.
Okay.
That was pretty much how I vetted him. He was like throwing money at me and I was borrowing it and giving him a rate of return that was beating the stock market at the time. Still is, by the way. And by a much larger margin today than it was back then. And after a while, he just approached me one night at a game and said, "Yo, when can I do what you do?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I don't want to just invest." He said, "I want to invest and own." So yeah, we jumped into that, bought a few deals, combined the portfolio, threw it into a couple of different LLCs and just kept progressing and buying. And now we're vertically integrating. When I say we, I mean me. I'm vertically integrating the property management aspect of all of this stuff because you run into the right people. Sometimes you run into the wrong people. We thought we had a good property manager and we didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm curious as well, just about the Air Force. What was your role? What did you do in the Air Force?
Yeah, I've done a lot of stuff. So when I went in, I was enlisted. I was an ammo troop for about 14 years. And then one day I walked in and I was like, "Hey, I got to cross train. I don't want to do this anymore." And I was going to get out. I was a police officer at the time. I was in the Guard. I lost faith in the systems that were running in that particular career field. So I had already achieved 3 degrees. I had 2 associate's degrees and a bachelor's. Walked into the recruiter's office and said, "Yeah, what do you got for me?" And they said, "We have this thing called contracting and acquisitions." And I said, "Cool, sounds great. Are we talking about like building stuff?" And it was a lot more than that. A lot more than that. So there was a lot more of the acquisition side of things. People needed stuff. I went out, I did the market research, I did the bid. Some people would send a request for proposal. I would send out the request for proposal. They would send me the bid and then I would evaluate the bids and then buy you're not supposed to be the lowest price, guys. It's a misconception that the government is supposed to buy the lowest price, but unfortunately that's what has permeated throughout the military at this point. And it just turned into this incredible journey where I wound up doing all of this extra stuff, moving from this back of the base type of thing to I'm in the front of the wing commander like once a month. And the next thing I knew, I was being asked, "Hey, do you want a commission?" So I made lieutenant. I was about to put on E8, which is senior master sergeant in the Air Force. And instead I took lieutenant's bars.
Wow.
As my one friend put it, he was now a colonel, Scott Herron, said to me, "Hey, you got to watch out. Right now, you're the head of the mouse, but you will then be the tail of the donkey." And I was. It was a very difficult transition going to lieutenant. So then I became the budget officer and then I went into intelligence. And that's where I finished my career. I did strategic planning. I did some A-10 work. And then I finished up in a remotely piloted aircraft. You can call them drones. I don't. I call them RPAs. I wound up in that career field and that's what ended my career.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. And I guess the reason I ask this is just because obviously you were doing all this other stuff while you were in the military. So just what does a typical day in the military look like? Is it like a job where you have set hours and stuff, or kind of what's it like?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you we did. So strategic planning, we were stationed stateside and would augment war planning efforts overseas. So periodically I would get on a plane with 10, 20 other intelligence troops and we'd fly over and we'd augment over in Ramstein Air Force Base, Germany, which was cool, except like my guys could get off, but I was working a lot. So we'd go over and we'd start this planning session and we'd be doing these 12 to 16 hour days, 7 days a week. And my guys would go out and they'd see the Cinderella Castle over there. And the one thing that I did get, I got one weekend in Austria, which was cool. And I was able to go to Trier, but they were able to go all over Europe every time we were there. I was just so jealous.
Not you.
No, being the boss sometimes is just brutal, but it was a lot of fun. It was a great job and I really enjoyed it. And it set me up for seeing the bird's eye view of everything that we currently do now, which is why we're not just a property management company or a real estate portfolio. We're now a conglomerate. We have 3 different real estate portfolios. We have a consulting faction of that. We have a podcast. We have a Facebook group. We're partners in a Coffee with the Captain, which is another group through Mighty Networks. Then we have the property management company and we own a hair salon. That's my wife's baby.
And the hair salon. Okay. Yeah, that's where that comes from.
That's why I was asking about the grooming earlier.
Okay. So obviously it sounds like there's tons and tons of crossovers or the skill sets that you learned in the military that have helped you in the real estate. I would imagine you were in acquisitions, you were going through that same process of underwriting things to some degree, getting bids, looking at all that, plus the leadership skills and all that as well. Do you think that for someone who's been in the military, who's had a career in the military, would you recommend people join the military? I know that it seems like it's really either one way or the other when you talk with people.
We can cross that line. If this is a faith-based podcast, and I will tell you that the military that I joined back in the 80s is not the military that it is today. At the risk of being semi-political, I will tell you that one of the reasons that I left was because of the CRT related aspect of what was going on with the new military that Millie put out. And I couldn't do it.
That's interesting. I say that because I have a lot of friends in the military. I used to live in Fayetteville, which is called Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
Pope Air Force Base. And so many of the veterans up there, operators, guys who've been in Afghanistan, multiple tours, they come back. They will not let their sons join the military today. They just won't let them.
I told my son that no, he is now a nurse. So he is in public service in that sense, but he's an assistant director of nursing at the respiratory ICU in a major university hospital here.
Nice.
And he was like, I'm thinking about it. No. And then he said, thinking about being a cop. I said, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's true. That's so sad. That's so true.
Yeah. But this was like 2014-ish. And one of the reasons I told him no, because it wasn't as bad for cops as it was back then, but as a master sergeant, I had put him through a prep school. It was 20-something thousand a year. And here I was making 70 and taking a large portion of that and just basically paying his tuition and then doing odd jobs like officiating ice hockey games and stuff like that, working. I've always been a hustler, but working the weekends, working nights for $40, $50 a game, just so I could make the tuition and still put food on the table.
Yeah.
You know, now I think that it's great. There's a saying that I can't remember which general came up with it. The first 4 years of service are for you, and the second or subsequent years of service is for the government. You get a lot of benefits by being in the military for the first 4 years. And then, or if you're in the Guard for 6, I would recommend if you do decide that you want to go in for any kind of benefits whatsoever, you join the Guard and then make your determination on what you want to do, because the benefits far outweigh the cost when you're talking about a part-time 1 weekend a month situation. Right. You can get education benefits and medical in the long run. I will tell you that I am beaten and broken because of the amount of time that I had done. I have no cartilage in my knees. I've got arthritis in pretty much every joint in my body. My ears ring. I get headaches and I suffer from PTSD, which is a brutal thing. But yeah, as far as that goes, I want to say that it was one of the best experiences of my life, and I will not give that back for anybody, but I saw the leadership aspect of the military changing and changing in a very bad direction.
Right.
Yeah, I've never served, but my dad and my brother did. And I feel like people like you who've had experiences like you, successful experiences in the military, I feel like that's going to be rare and rare in the future because of leadership. I feel like that's over.
We're at a tipping point now, my opinion. We're at a tipping point now where those who can serve don't want to, and those who can't serve are trying to change the military so they can. We have a problem with people just passing the PT test to get in.
Right. I feel bad saying this, but I'm going to go out on a limb here. So one of the late stages of the Roman Empire, when they couldn't get patriotic people in the military, is they would go out and they would basically recruit barbarians.
Yeah.
They recruit barbarians. And that was basically the end of the Roman Empire.
Exactly. They fell apart from within. Yeah.
Yes. The military today is no longer recruiting or attracting the red-blooded, patriotic, God-fearing, hardworking, disciplined Americans. They're getting, I feel bad saying this, and I'm probably going to piss people off, they're attracting a lot of riffraff.
Yeah.
And the worst part is that they're giving them deadly skills, the riffraff.
Yeah.
And people who think that the military will be the last defense against tyranny, they're mistaken, because by the time tyranny shows up, the military will have been completely transformed and they'll be an arm of the tyranny. They won't be someone to resist it.
That's correct. And I watched a video from a young, I think she was a specialist, who basically said, if I get ordered to walk the streets in the United States and tell you to get in your house and you don't, I have no problem shooting you. And I was just like, whoa,
I saw that.
Well, wait a second. No, that is absolutely the wrong aspect. Now, I've also made the argument on the other side for cyber defense and things of that nature, where I don't want the uber fit guy that can run a 5-minute mile, deadlift 500 pounds and ruck 25 miles at a 4-minute mile pace. I don't, in that case, I want the fat guy with the spacers who drinks Mountain Dew all day, who does nothing but code. That's the guy I want in that position, because I can tell him, hey, dude, here's the thing. I want you to go over and do this to this country and see if you can shut their escalators off. And I want him to be like, cool, man, let's go. That's the guy I want for that. That's a specific type of job. Everything else, you have one function in life, and that is to take the orders of those above you, including the President of the United States. And when Congress passes the act of war, not an executive order, Congress passes an act of war, you go over and you kill. And that is the primary function of the military. Follow my,
you destroy,
break it or blow it up.
Yep.
And we've lost touch with that. Everything is there are times when I don't have a problem with a subordinate asking me, why do I need to do that? When that time it is not while we're in the act. When we are supporting foreign forces in a country that shall not be named, in a place that we aren't, doing things that we don't, to people who don't exist, with people who don't exist, that's not the time to be asking me why. That's the time to just follow your order and shut up.
Yeah.
If I tell you to push the button, push the button. And we are now at a point where that is not occurring. We have people that we used to toss people for being a conscientious objector, and now we have them sitting in the combat seat.
That's a good point.
During combat.
Right.
You can't have that. You can't have that.
I appreciate that candor there. Honestly, I think that's something that needs to be said and that people need to hear.
And it's valuable coming from someone with your experience.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We have leadership with no direction.
Yeah.
We have, what are my goals? I've been raised on, in the military and outside the military, SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relative, and time-based. And I was in a job for 5 years where I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing from day to day, because leadership never had anything but just go ahead over that other building, sit there, fly the mission, don't mess things up, and then shift change, right?
Yeah.
It was like, wait, who am I looking for? What am I supposed to be doing? What is my metric? What's my measurable? What are we working towards? No. And unfortunately, that's been the last 20 plus years. I will tell you that when I was working in strategic planning from up until 2016, from roughly 2011 to 2016, we were doing the planning. I took part in planning I can't say that. We took part in a plan where it was, okay, this is the end game. This is the exit strategy, the end. And then no boots on the ground by executive order and it was like, well, wait a second. So back to the drawing board. We're going to do another 3 weeks, 16-hour days, and we're going to plan this thing out again. And it was just great. Now what? All right. What's our goal? Because you can't, as much as I hate to say it, I'm an Air Force guy, but you can have as much air power as you want. You can have complete air supremacy. And if you don't have people clearing the streets as you're moving along, you're just flying around blowing people up with rifles. And that's what was happening for the last 20 years.
That's a good point.
Wow. So I think maybe this is a good time to jump into it. And you had mentioned earlier that, which of course is unfortunately very common with members of the military, but suffering from PTSD and some recent impacts and things that went along with that. So why don't you mind, if you don't mind sharing kind of what we had chatted about offline there?
Yeah. And this is not something that I bring up often. In fact, you guys, I'm relating this the first time publicly, other than a few people who knew. And think about this. The number was 22. It is now higher, the number of veterans that kill themselves daily. And it doesn't matter what you do, and it doesn't matter what you think. There are several things that happen that contribute to the degradation of the military mindset. One of them is the complete and total loss of your identity, which I suffered from. Guys, thinking about this in the base sense, we're talking about a guy who was at 37 doors at the time. sitting there 1 year after retirement who I had everything going for me. We had a couple of issues, but that's nothing out of the norm. And then one day I came home and my mind was telling me, hey, let's go to sleep. Take these pills. It's all right. I took a bottle of Xanax and my whole goal was to fall asleep. And I didn't care if I woke up. And that was just it. And the worst thing that has ever happened to me was that mistake. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me was I woke up on a Saturday morning in 2022.
Wow. Let me ask you a question. So this is the end result, but how long before this event do you feel like you were starting that decline or that descent towards that destination?
Yeah. So they tell you if you say something and all that's all great. When you leave the military, you get a 1-hour briefing on the things that are available to you in the VA. And the majority of that is, this is how you file your disability paperwork. Everybody sit around and sign your name here. And this is the document. And you're going to talk to this group and this group about how to get to 100% service disabled veteran. That's it, man. They don't talk to you about, hey, 6, 8, 12 months from now, you're going to realize all of those people that you had this camaraderie with are going to stop talking to you. You're not going to be wearing the uniform anymore. I traded this one for t-shirts, joggers, and slides. That's my new uniform. And they don't tell you that that's going to have a major mental effect on your personality, on your overall mental well-being. And it's only by the grace of God that I don't remember waking up and getting a meal in the middle of the night. I had a plate of Thanksgiving leftovers, thank God, because it's what saved my life. And I sat there and I watched a 2-hour movie that I don't remember. And then the next day I checked myself into a veterans hospital, sought medical help, realized that I had 4 different doctors giving me 4 different prescriptions that all counteracted each other, which increased the amount of side effects that created this situation where I circled the toilet bowl and then eventually went down that drain.
Wow.
And it was gabapentin, Adderall, pick one. I think I was on at one point about 7 or 8 drugs. And there was a TikTok going around right now where a medical nurse is sitting there with all of the drugs that the VA has put her on. And she's just pulling it out, stacking it. And she winds up with this line of drugs. Gabapentin was the worst for me. Gabapentin is the one that really, I found myself curled up in the fetal position in a shower, crying profusely. That combined with all of the other stuff was just absolutely horrible.
Wow. That's interesting. Sorry, a quick comment. You don't realize this, but it's true. When you serve in the military, especially for the length that you serve, that really becomes your identity. That's their entire universe. And then to retire and to leave, and you're like, okay, what next? That's it. There are very few things I've heard from people who've done, especially like special forces type stuff. There are very few things you can do after that type of career that's engaging, because you're like, everything is a downer. Everything's a downer. That's a very good point. That's very sad.
Yeah.
So you checked yourself into the VA hospital. How long, or what was the process like, and getting back on your feet? What did you do that helped with that?
Yeah, I checked myself in. When I did check in, my blood pressure was like 197 over, I think 75 or something. It was some ridiculous number. I was in, something like that. My resting heart rate was in the 120s. And I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. They immediately took me up to, for lack of a better term, they put me in the psych ward. They put me under observation for 3 days, suicide watch, essentially, which debatable whether or not I needed it, but it was still, I was there for that reason. So I guess I did.
That's probably just standard.
It is. And then 7 days later, I was walking out of there. I had 3 meetings a day, 2 with one psychologist, 1 psychiatrist, and then group therapy as well. And it was a horrible, horrifying, and great experience. Great in the sense that I felt as though I got my life back. And look, I'm on the right podcast for this, but I'm sitting there in my room and I promised myself that I had gotten extremely out of shape. I had put on a bunch of weight. I'm down almost 40 pounds right now. And this guy, Andy, walks in the room. I don't know who Andy is. I've never seen Andy. He's not wearing a medical badge. He doesn't have an ID on him. And I do yoga and I meditated, and then I started to pray for the first time in a long time. And Andy walks in and he starts talking to me about which side of the wall of spirituality am I at, and which choice am I going to make from this point on? Because on one side of my spirituality is, yeah, I can be physically fit, and I can be making a lot of money. But if I'm not spiritually fit, the other ones don't matter. And it's all going to come crashing down like a house of cards. And he was absolutely right, because that is exactly how I got there.
Yeah.
So every morning I wake up, I go to the gym. I'm usually there I used to do 2 to 3 hours in the gym. And that was when I was not in shape. Come to find out that the majority of it is just taking control of my own life. And now I can do an hour in the gym, maybe walk a little bit, try to get my 10,000 steps in. But I read a Bible passage every day. And coincidentally enough, today was Matthew 6:33. So I was like, and what is it? It's all about walk the path of righteousness and things will be given to you. And I'm like sitting here in reflection going, oh, by the way, Andy doesn't exist. There was no Andy. I don't know. I have no idea what happened, but I was given this opportunity to walk the path of righteousness or fall apart again.
It's interesting you're saying that. It's like this podcast, we have a lot of people on here who are successful, and you're obviously definitely successful. And I always think in analogies, and I'm like, being successful in this life, I would say, is like, how successful are you at building, follow me here, sand castles at the beach? Some people can build these beautiful sand castles. Some have just little upturned buckets, right?
Yeah.
But every night that stuff is wiped away.
Yeah.
Every night it's wiped away. And that's basically the end of our life. It's like, how many of us are focusing on building what's really valuable, what's eternal? And that's where the spiritual comes in, where it's important. We live on this life. We're human beings. We're material. It's important to work on success in this life, but it's also important to focus on success in the next, one that will last forever. When that beach has eroded away whatever you've built in this life, what's left? If that's all you've got, that's depressing. That's depressing.
Yeah. And guys, I had built all this stuff before this moment, before that Black Friday, and I could very easily have just stopped and watched as things just got better and everything would have been fine. I don't know what prompted me to take those pills that day. I have an idea, and it's not something that has ever entered my mind again. But again, I came off all medications and then sought help afterwards. And oh, by the way, for anyone who's listening, who is going through this right now, call the crisis hotline. If you are, having any experience or any thoughts whatsoever, call the crisis hotline. Even if you just go down to the VA and get yourself evaluated, or just get the opportunity to talk to someone who understands what you're going through. My son wanted me to go to Temple, which is a local hospital here. And I told him, I looked him in the face and I said, I appreciate that, but I need to go where people understand me.
Yeah.
And that's why I went into the VA, which is crazy. It's not a great place, but the people that were around me were vets.
They can relate. They
got it. Yeah. Who was on drugs and alcohol because of it? Who had tried to take their own life? We had 2 guys that were homeless. That it was just a horrible scene, but at the same time, I felt comfortable.
It was, yeah, probably therapeutic too. I think people need to recognize that these type of things, what you experienced that one time, and hopefully, God willing, it was the one time it'll ever happen. But these are spiritual attacks. They wait until you're at your weakest, and then put thoughts in your mind that are not your thoughts. Be anything like from what you experienced, which is just go to sleep. It could be something even worse than that about hurting somebody else. There's so many things that pop up. And I think just recognize that it's a spiritual attack, recognize what it is, and find people around you who experience what you've experienced, who can relate, I think is the main thing.
Yeah. And just like we were talking about earlier, mentioned that whole network is your net worth thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's a common phrase for business and all that things, but really that applies to every area of your life. Surrounding yourself with, if you are struggling in your faith or with these issues of PTSD, surrounding yourself with people who can bring you up in those areas is super critical, right? and finding that community that you can relate to and be encouraged by. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And again, I hope people who are listening can see the encouragement in that there are ways to come through these challenging things. And it is a sad thing that unfortunately the members of our military, our veterans, unfortunately go through these challenges because of what they've experienced and gone through in their time of service.
And take Bud's advice. Take his advice to heart. Like, call, go visit, do it right away. Don't delay.
And that's hard. I would imagine even harder for people who have been in the military, because especially there's still the manly man culture and talking about
independent, self-reliant, stuff like that.
Yeah, I got this, right? I got this. How many times did that go through my mind before I stood there and took those pills? I can't tell you. I can't.
Yeah, no, 100%. So yeah.
Everybody has a breaking point. That's the thing. To think you don't have a breaking point is foolish. You have one. Reach somebody in your network before you reach that point, I guess, is the main thing.
Hey guys, it's Brenna Carl, CEO and co-founder of The Mortgage Shop. When I'm not spending my time searching for the best pizza in town, working out, well, because of pizza, or fighting sharks as Kale likes to say, I spend my time educating clients on the best investment products that will help them build generational wealth and making sure their loan process is as smooth as warm butter on a piece of toast. Call us today to get started with your investment journey at 800-816-7982 or to talk more about pizza. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does your routine look like now on the other end of this? So you mentioned you started getting back into the gym. You lost a bunch of weight. You look like you're a pretty fit guy here from what I can see.
Yeah,
So
I'm doing all right.
What is your routine? What does your routine look like now? What works for you?
Yeah. So I wake up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, sometimes earlier, sometimes depending on the day. Mondays and Tuesdays are my wife days. She's home. The salon is closed Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. First thing in the morning, I'm hitting the gym. Doesn't matter what day. I don't care if I'm just taking a walk. That's fine. Get your couple of miles, 4.4 or 4.5 miles for 10,000 steps. You'd be surprised at how easy that is to hit. So what I do is I go in, I walk for about 20 minutes. Then I do a quick weight routine. And then I get back on the treadmill in the middle of it for about 20 minutes. And then I do a little bit more weights. And then I get off and do the treadmill again for about 20 minutes. And then I come home. Then I time block a lot. I do have a couple of assistants who help me out with all that. And so for the first 4 hours after the gym, Mondays is completely different. Mondays is Stephanie. Mondays is I get done at the gym. I drive with her. I take her to her gym, which is about 30 minutes away. She had some balance issues. So we have her with a combination physical therapist / trainer. And then after that, we go have breakfast, and then we'll have a meeting, right, about what's going on for that week with the businesses. After that, we'll go food shopping and then make a deposit at the bank and then come home and just hang out. That's my Monday. Every other day of the week is basically 4-hour blocks. It's for myself is the first 4 hours. For my business is the second 4 hours. For my guys, my clients, my team is the last 4 hours of every day.
I like that. Yeah. I think what you're doing on Mondays with your wife, that's awesome. Is she involved in the various businesses as well? Or
she's involved with sheer know-how. She knows what's going on with the other businesses. It's just, she's got so much going on with that shop that she doesn't really get too involved with the day-to-day. She just basically keeps up to par with it. When I told her that I was going to get into property management, she had some concerns because I had been a work addict, a workaholic back last year before my event. And then afterwards, we worked very hard to make sure that I am. And guys, when I say that, like I do a 4-hour, 4-hour, and 4-hour block, I know that's 12 hours, but keeping in mind that the first 4 hours are for myself. Then the second 4 hours is I touch 8 different companies in those 4 hours. And then the last 4 hours is just networking. So I'm effectively working a 4-hour day. Right. I get on podcasts and I'll go to networking events, or I'll go to meetups, or I'll get on Zoom calls, or I'll do a webinar or something like that. So to me, that's not really work. That's more of a decompression type of thing. So
yeah, that's just life.
Yeah, exactly. It's having fun.
Yeah. No, it's great. So what, besides the gym and the physical portion, do you do anything different now or specific now in terms of the mental health or stress? Do you do anything, with a prayer or meditation or?
Yeah, every day I'll So when I get home from the gym, I take my dog downstairs. We'll hang out back. I'll read my scripture for my verse of the day, and then we'll just hang out for a little bit. And then I'll take a shower and then I'll start my day. I cook my wife breakfast. I'll cook my breakfast and then I'll cook her breakfast for the next day, and then refrigerate it. And then she'll take that to work with her the next day. It's something that we grew into. I cook dinner every night. I didn't do that before. That's my relaxation. I did go to culinary school back, like when I first got out of the military back in 90. And
Is there anything you don't do, bud? Making us look bad.
I can't dunk a basketball. So, yeah,
Gee.
that's pretty much it. Look, I like to have fun. We just planned a vacation. We're going to Aruba in August. I love the place. I'm just trying to have some more fun and relax a lot more, because I was so tense before that it really took a toll. So now if I feel like taking a nap, I'll take a nap. If I feel like binge watching a show, and I know this flies in the face of everything, Grant Cardone and those guys that are always at high intensity, that's great. 99% is finding the right people. 1% is getting out of the way and letting them do their thing, and then periodically checking on them. That's what that middle 4 hours a day is.
I'm glad you brought this up, because I struggle with that a bit. Like, I'm a very high strung, very rigid type.
Never would have thought that, Kale. Having a conversation with you before, never would have thought that you were.
How do you do it? Because I have a real hard time like sitting still, or not so much sitting still, but I have to be doing something active. If I were to go take a nap, I feel guilty. If I were to, like, in the middle of the day, go down and just say, yeah, I'm going to watch a show for a little bit, I'd feel guilty. Like, how do you break out of that? I'm here for advice. Tell me.
Yeah, man. So a couple of things. First, I'd definitely recommend a couple of books. I don't know if you guys are into the EOS model. Gino Wickman is an author that I've read all of his books. Traction, What is EOS? Yeah. The last one that I just read, Rocket Fuel, is another one. And then Get a Grip, which is an actual tale of how to initiate the EOS model, the entrepreneurial operating system.
Right.
But before you read that, read Who, Not How by Dan Sullivan.
Right.
And then be very patient with yourself and give yourself a little bit of leeway. And then when you find the right people and you execute the EOS model, allow them to be completely and totally honest with you. If you're getting in their way, they need to be able to tell you, you're getting in my way, dude. And then take that for what it is. It's just constructive advice. As what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? We're standing up a marketing company. I hired this young lady from the Philippines that I'm going to partner with on this. And I guess she thought I was going to do everything. And I was like, I hired you for that. You go ahead. Right. Every Friday we're going to meet. We're going to talk about what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what we're good at, what we're not good at. And then we're going to go from there. Tell me who you need. We'll make it work. Same thing with the property management company. Right. Pick up the right person, have them do your maintenance. Pick up the right person, have them run your operations. Pick up the right person, have them run your finances. Right. Every company's got those 3 fingers of death, right? So you have the owner, and then you have sales and marketing, you have operations, and you have finance. That's it. That's every company, everywhere. I don't care how you break it down further. They're the 3 things that you need, and they all need to be running smoothly. So once you get those 3 things moving smoothly, get out of the way. And then enjoy life.
Enjoy life. Yeah. I like it. Thank you.
Yeah, man, I've started to take, I used to think, if I'm not going to the golf course, I'm not going to be happy. And I used to plan things like, this will make me happy. This will make me happy. This will make me happy. That's BS. It's not. That's not what's going to make you happy. You know what makes me happy? What I found really makes me happy? Going out back, sitting on the deck, knowing that I can, and I don't have to do anything, with my dog laying on the deck and me sitting with the sun on my face. And then every day I say 3 things. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for my God. I'm thankful for my dog. Yeah. And that's pretty much it, man. When you break it down to the simplest level, the truth comes out.
Isn't it funny how scripture has been telling us that the whole time? Yet it's so hard to listen, right?
Yeah.
Hard to listen. So let's talk about that. I know you said a Roman Catholic background.
Yeah.
Why don't you share us a little bit about your story of faith? Were your parents Catholic or?
No, man. Roman Catholics, we like Irish Catholic family, beer and hot dogs was like the norm. My mom was a pretty decent cook. So guys, I am not a practicing Roman Catholic. I will tell you that flat out. I sit and read the Bible on my own. I don't go to mass. I don't. I believe that I know I'm a spiritual person. I know that I believe in God. I know I believe in Jesus. I know that I follow the ways of the Bible. And there are more rules. There are more guidelines on finance in the Bible than there are in most finance books.
Yeah.
And if you just follow the simple rules, it's just so easy.
Yeah. So what I know since your event last year, you got reinvigorated a little bit. Did that have any changes, or was that kind of an impetus in like what we were just talking about and how you view life now and what's the importance of enjoying it now instead of maybe just pursuing things in that high octane environment?
Yeah. Now, again, I'll go back to Andy. Andy told me stay on the left side of the line.
Right.
I stay on the left side of the line. I take care of myself spiritually and everything else falls into place.
Right.
My buddy, Paul, now Paul is a practicing Christian. He lives in Oklahoma. He's my best friend. We talk by phone majority of the time, occasionally by FaceTime or by Zoom, but he called it an angel appearance. I don't know that I believe it makes sense, but at the same time, like, I don't know, but he's also like we'll call it like my spiritual leader, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul gives me a lot of great advice, scripture-based great advice. And I need that. I need someone in my life who's going to reach out to me periodically and go, hey, yo, stupid, what are you doing?
We all need that, honestly. And I think we need in our lives. So he's basically discipling you.
Yes.
And then you can disciple someone else. And then someone should be discipling me and same with Kale, but it should be both directions. We should be discipled and discipling at the same time.
Yes. And we have a give and take because he's in real estate. He's just starting out on his journey. Now, guys, I do run a program for vets and first responders. BudEvans.com is the website. If you go there, that's great. If you don't, that's great. Right. But normally I charge about $6,000 for what I give Paul, because Paul, and it sounds like a trade, but it's really not. He started with me first. And then it was like, okay, listen, dude, I can help you. If you want to do this, let's do this. Get your house. And he was a Dave Ramsey follower. Nothing against him. Great guy, but he is dead set against leverage. And I told Paul, that's fantastic. How do you think he bought $10 million worth of property in Tennessee? Do you think that he's practicing what he's preaching? I'm going to tell you he's not. He's leveraged.
Oh, yeah.
So if you take a HELOC on your house, you can use that to buy your first rental property. Have your rental property pay your HELOC. Then when your rental property pays your HELOC down to a certain point that you find it comfortable, go out and buy another rental property. And if you do that 4 times in the next 4 years, you don't he's retired military as well. Now he works for the church specifically, and he's doing it and he's crushing it. He's just buying his 5th rental property in 3 years.
Wow.
Guys, it's a marathon, not a sprint. He's 50.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just like in terms of what we're talking about in life and enjoying life and not getting caught up in the consumerism and fast-paced nature of this world. And again, like scripture has been telling us all along, it's a very difficult thing, again, with all the bombardment of everything out there that you see, the comparisons, all this, all that. It does tried and true methods of taking time, building wealth over time. It has really fallen to the wayside. Not just building wealth, your fitness, your faith, anything that requires any type of discipline or consistency. We often take the time portion out of that equation and we want it now. And then when it doesn't happen, or we don't get to where we thought we were going to be, or we see people who are doing a lot more than we are, we get discouraged and a lot of people end up just stopping.
Yeah.
And so again, going back to that community and having like somebody like you have with your buddy Paul, the iron sharpens iron, somebody that can encourage you and one way or the other and vice versa to keep you going, because life is difficult. We have trials and tribulations. That's a promise. And we need to have people that can support us and bring us up. And Wes, like you mentioned earlier, and Bud, like you mentioned with your, what we can call it, the angel experience there, the spiritual battle out there is real. And I think for those of us of faith, I think we can agree on that. And it pervades our lives in so many different ways and so many different avenues, and they're insidious ways because they're not overt and out there in the open. They're those little voices in the back of our head. They're those things saying, yeah, you might have done this or accomplished this, but nah, you're still not good enough. You
Yeah.
should, who are you to tell somebody how they can do stuff or what they should be doing? Look what you don't do. Right. So we have all these insidious things that are coming in from the enemy. And unfortunately, it's something we don't focus on. And I think that's by design of the devil himself. The less or the more he can make himself not appear to be real, the easier it is for him to invade.
We're seeing it now, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's all about being covert. You don't go behind enemy lines wearing your uniform. That's stupid. You want to be a ghost. And for everybody who thinks that, oh, I don't see someone with horns and a pitchfork, it's like, you're an idiot. The guy's been doing what he's been doing for thousands of years. He's a master.
He's the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet.
And
You want to be friends with this guy.
And he's a master of human psychology. He's been studying us and perfecting what he does. You're not going to recognize him. Okay. That's foolish. That's foolish. In fact, you need the Spirit of God to recognize his activities. Otherwise, like you said, like he's someone you want to be friends with.
Yeah. And
Hey, just come to this bar with me, man. It'll be good. We'll be home by 8. Next thing you know, it's 4:00 in the morning.
Go talk to that girl over there. Just talk to her. You never next thing your marriage is over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just share this real quick. I know we're coming to the end here, but it was just something that it's a silly little testimonial, but it was a good reminder to me of the power of prayer. So I have a 3-year-old and he doesn't sleep very well. He wakes up throughout the night periodically and he always has a little crying fit, but then he goes back to sleep once he realizes somebody is there. And this was just, I think it's like 2 nights ago. He woke up a lot earlier than he usually does, just screaming, like outrageous screaming. And usually when I put him to bed, pray with him, and then I read him a book until he falls asleep. I didn't do it that night because my wife put him to sleep. And so I hear him screaming, and after a few minutes, I go in there, and he's just like a mess, like inconsolable, kicking, banging his head on the wall. Like he will not settle down at all. And so I laid him down, tried talking to him, tried comforting him, nothing. And I said, why don't I try praying for him? And so I asked him, hey, buddy, you want to pray? And that got him even more upset. He just started going nuts. And so I physically laid myself on him gently to hold him down a little bit. And I started praying for him. And one of the portions of the prayer is that I say, Father God, may your angels watch over him and banish any evil presence or spirit in the mighty name of your son, Jesus. And no joke. It's no joke. When I finished that prayer and I had my head on his chest, so I could hear and feel his heart, racing a mile a minute. And when I finished that prayer, it was immediately his heart started slowing down and he started calming and breathing. And within a couple minutes, he was fast asleep.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I was just, oh man, thank you, God. Thank you for that.
That was real. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, thank you for that reminder. So anyway, it was a little bit of a tangent, but just talking about the spiritual battle and everything, I needed that reminder because sometimes with prayer, just like anything else, you do it over and over. It becomes a check mark on the box versus something having meaning or importance.
And for me, Cale, what that gives me conviction is that as fathers, as the men of our house, we have an obligation not to pray for ourselves only, but pray for our families and our kids, no matter how old they are, because who knows what spiritual attack they're under. You could be attacked spiritually as a 3-year-old or as a 31-year-old. I got 5 kids. I need to pray for them a lot more now. You've convicted me.
There we go. Finally, I can convict you. There we go.
You all the time, Cale.
All right. I want to get into the end here and wrap it up. This has been really cool, really inspirational, bud. So really appreciate you sharing the candor and everything. I think our audience is going to get a lot of value out of this. So just in the wrap up section here, just ask a few questions. So you like to go in threes in any of these areas that we talked about, the finances, fitness, whether it's physical, mental health, whatever, faith. Do you have 3 actionable or practical tips that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. Read a lot. I'll tell you that flat out. The pursuit of knowledge is paramount. The second tip I would give is find someone to do things better than you and then be a partner with them. And the last thing would just be get started, forget the fear. And I don't want to say chase adversity, but let's say that the things that are worth doing are not easy. Otherwise, everyone would do it. So if you're willing to do it, you're going to take a lot of grief from those who are supposed to support you the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah. It's wisdom right there. Wonderful. And then for people who want to get in touch with you, whether it's for social media or for the various services that you offer, what's the best way? What are your websites, all that stuff?
Yeah, great. So at bud.evans on Instagram, that's first. If you DM me, you will be talking to me. I answer pretty much every DM. Go ahead and follow me there. Or if you're interested in our program, check out budevans.com. That is that's the second fastest way to get in touch with me, because that goes to all of my laptop, my computer in my kitchen. It pops right up and I get a notification that you've reached out. And then the last thing is theaimhighpodcast.com, where we basically talk to anyone who was involved in real estate and talk about what they did, how they got there, what mistakes they made, and how they recovered using other people in their network as help. And then the last thing, guys, if you don't mind, is the Aim High REI on Facebook. It is absolutely free. There will never be a charge. Join the group, hang out with us. Every Friday, we talk about silly stuff and news articles that have happened throughout the week about real estate. So that's Aim High REI on Facebook.
Excellent.
Awesome. Well, very good. Thank you again, Bud. Really appreciate your time and sharing your stories and everything. And we'll see you guys next week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.